right. Hello, welcome to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. My name is Monty Dean. This is Planet Collingwood. I've had Skype crash on me twice already, so huzzah. Now I'm going to try and bring people in, and for those who are listening, you are wanted, and I will try and add you as we go. So if you've enjoyed the last 2 hours, unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to listen to it, so I'll have to go to the archives. Please donate to the station. Go to the website and donate what you can. I'm unfortunately stop doing that, you stupid piece of crap. Geez, this just how to start a show by completely everything dying. Alrighty, so now donate what you can so that the station can continue broadcasting in the studio at and bit. And hang on, not this one. Great. Alrighty, let's see now. I'm just completely because I started the call and then it went white and then it's closed down. So two of the hosts and stuff. You've turned over. Excellent. All right, I've got 3 guests turning up. Once I figure out what did I upset the Skype gods? So yeah, if you enjoyed the last 2 hours, donate what you can. Unfortunately, I'm not in chat at the moment because I don't have the right cookies. And being a comedian and not an internet guy, I'm just going to do a food reference, whatever that means. So let's hit the ball rolling because it's been an interesting week. Energies and planets and just crazy stuff. We've been joined by John Z, Bruce MacDonald, as well as the HiJacker. John, how are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm all right. Just sitting here at work.
Oh, okay. Oh, well, yeah, he's working again, so that's a step forward. Bruce, how are you, sir? How is Central? I nearly said Central Africa. I thought, no, he didn't move. How is Central America?
I think he's on pause, whatever that means.
Okay. Now it's not going to play nice, is it? So, yeah. Now there's 3 things. Okay. HiJacker, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here, Monty. Yeah, probably Bruce is getting some coffee or something.
No, it's just as I said.
You want me to do the kickoff of the Super Bowl game?
Okay. Yeah. Give me a second. I'm trying to add Bruce to the call. Yes, I know it's a missed call. Thank you, you stupid piece of crap. Give me a moment. I'm having a great day.
That's okay. I can do the kickoff.
This reminds me of Bobby Vicarious. Microphone. How does this work?
Oh,
right.
Well, no.
Well, we got.
There we go.
Right, big news. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
HiJacker. Yeah, I'll pass the ball. Bruce, you've joined us. Sorry about that. Skype did that whole whiteout thing to me twice at the start of the show, and that's why it took forever to get you on. So.
No worries, brother. No worries.
Excellent.
Glad
so
to be
yeah,
here.
yeah. There's 3 calls going and crap. Anyway. So, I did get a message from HiJacker that he's got some good info. So, let's go for the kickoff and see if we're playing chess. HiJacker, go ahead.
Yeah, it's really complicated. Actually, we gamed this thing out. In fact, it was like a panel like this with Bruce, John Z, a couple others. Probably 3 or 4 months ago when this thing actually started. We were actually right in our instincts. And so this is the piece of the puzzle now that we can actually see what's actually going on with this COVID-19 coronavirus, Chinese virus. We can now see clearly what it is. And the piece of the puzzle that I got, don't go to the website now and miss this show. Basically, Rick Wiles of True News, he did this interview with this multi-billionaire. And this multi-billionaire, he's a very unique person. He's on the board. He's on the UN Board of Intellectual Property, Hunger. He's intermixed. He deals with corporations. In fact, he's got the largest uh, accounting firm in the world. In other words, and he's Palestinian. He actually was forced out of Palestine in 48. He really grew up hard, but it turns out he's like a savant. He's really smart. I don't know his name. You can go ahead and Google him. Even if I knew his name, because I got dyslexia, I can't pronounce it. But anyways, so for whatever reason, this Palestinian is trusted by all these Jewish companies and corporations and Chinese corporations to actually do an honest accounting of their particular corporations and businesses. Furthermore, he's got the largest firm for intellectual property. In fact, he sits as chairman, or at least on the board of the intellectual property of the UN. Go ahead. No, you can interrupt me anytime.
No, so I think that was just a little bit of echo or something like that. So continue on.
Right. So what I'm telling you, this guy is like a really big gun in the world. I think he's even a senator for Jordan. I think he's out of Amman, Jordan. But he's a big guy. He's a big billionaire. He's a big thinker. In fact, he wrote many books. One was The Third Industrial Revolution is Ending, and we're going into the fourth. He mentions that. And so he was the piece of the puzzle of this whole, virus thing, this whole lockdown of what this is really about. And so based on his information and the information that I have, the information that the round table has gathered up, like squirrels gathering up nuts, we're able to pull all these different, puzzle pieces together, jigsaw puzzle pieces at that. I mean, they really make it complicated. So anyways, he did like an hour and a half interview, and he really opened up with his information of what's going on. And so this is what we are actually into. And it's actually fairly good news. I was actually surprised of his assessments and the information that he knows. And he knows Jimmy Carter. He's talked to Joe Biden. I mean, he's like one of these guys. In fact, all I did for the whole interview, I just watched him to see if like he would like shapeshift or like if he was like one of these part of these reptilian people. And no, he didn't break it all. But anyways, this is what he said. He said, and we were right. I think Bruce MacDonald gamed this out too. The Zionists of this world do have control. But what's happened is that the Chinese, they realized that their economic engine was basically running away with the world's economy, and that they were going to be the dominant power. And so literally, basically the Zionist masters lost control of the Han Chinese, and they were going to run their own program. Like a third of business in Africa is done by the Chinese or whatever. Anyways, they're all over the world. And they are rolling the whole world up economically. And so what this virus was about is that they actually did hit him, the deep state, I'm saying. This is not even President Trump. You might remember President Trump at one press conference, he kind of looks up into the heavens when he's talking about what's going on with China and the trade deal. This goes back a couple of months. And he looks up into the heavens and goes, well, I was chosen to do this because of what the Chinese are basically doing. So this is the deal. The deal is that the Chinese realized we're actually in a war. What we're actually taking a look at is an asymmetrical war in which bioweapons are being used, AI is being used, supercomputers, all of this thing. It's not open war, but it's an economic, informational, political type war, all under the surface of what we're not seeing. That's why we can't understand quite why everybody's doing what they're doing. That's because we're actually at a war for dominance. Who's going to be the next dominant player? The Chinese calculated that all they have to do, and they made a miscalculation on not getting Hillary in there. They made a real serious, what Steve Bannon says was the greatest intelligence failure of the communist Chinese intelligence apparatus, in that they didn't see President Trump coming. And so once Trump came, then we went into like the tariffs. We went into trade negotiations. It took forever to get him to do a deal. President Trump said, "Look, let's do a big deal about your intellectual property, how your court systems are going to work, transparency." The Chinese balked, and so they broke it into like 3 phases. And so January 1st, we went into the first phase, so to speak, of how the Chinese were actually going to relate to commerce and business. But that's not what they were doing. All they were doing was basically buying time. So this looks like what we are into. We are into an asymmetrical war with China. China believed that all they had to do was hold out for 4 or 5 years with their economic model, and they would become the dominant economic power on this earth. That would be followed by basically military power, which they can convert a lot of their ships and that type of thing. And so what this Kahogi guy, if I'm not saying his name right, somebody needs to come up with his name. Kahoji, whatever his name is, this Palestinian savant billionaire out of Amman, Jordan, who's got the #1 accounting firm. Somehow the Jews trust this guy that they will give up the correct numbers, and then also the #1 intellectual property firm. And so that's what the war is basically about. And so what we're looking at is that this is basically what happened, is that this Yuan virus really wasn't a big thing, but they decided to turn it into a big thing. And then shortly at the beginning of the year, or right at the end of the year, the deep state actually made the first strike against China. They knew China was going for dominance. They were just buying time. This phase 1 deal of the trade thing was just to basically buy time, throw like $19 billion at the United States farmers. Meanwhile, they can buy up Smithfield Farms. They can still operate. Yeah, there was a lot of tariffs. They had to give up some money, but they gave up the ground, thinking, okay, all we have to do is concentrate on basically getting Trump out of office. All we need is time. And so that's all the Chinese were doing. They figured they would get worldwide dominance within 4, 5, max 6 years. That's all they needed. And this was like 3 years ago. So that's all they were doing. The deep state realized that. I'm talking about the Zionists, the Jews, who's got control of the magical money machine. They realized, wait a minute, if things keep on going, now you got to remember, we both got AI. So the Chinese got AI, we got AI. It's actually going to war with each other. And so that's what you're seeing, is that we're seeing an asymmetrical war. So anyways, the Jews, the Team America Jew, basically, the Federal Reserve, they realize their magical money machine is now in jeopardy. They realize within 3, 4, 5 years, the Chinese will be the #1 economic power. And then they will be no more. So the Zionists coalesced around somebody like Trump, or they did. No, they coalesced around Trump. He was basically their man, but it was still not working. And so they took the dramatic step, and it was probably RAI that told them to do it, to actually hit Wuhan with a serious bioweapon. That kicked the ball off. that kicked the war off. That was asymmetrical war. And so, and then it went to, we all know what happened. Chinese took advantage of it, and they go, okay, while we got a virus, we can round up our dissidents. That's why the 15 to 21 million cell phones went empty. But let me go ahead and wrap it up. What this Palestinian Khohozi guy said. He said that what is going on here with this virus, with this economic war, with this trade war, this informational war, he says that we have actually tried 3, 4, I think he said up to 6 times to bring the Chinese to the table, to sit down and saying, look, we know you're the rising power. We are the 2 dominant powers on the earth. We have to work this out. If we do not work it out, we will go to World War III. The whole world will be devastated. You have to sit down and talk to us. But this Khohozi guy said the Chinese refused. They refused to sit down. All they were all about was buying time because they had the economic model. They knew all they needed was time. So now what Khohozi is saying is that what's basically getting ready to happen now, and he's got really a lot of inside. I mean, he's a big guy. Just listen to that interview. He's saying there's going to be what the United States is basically doing now is trying to provoke, and they've actually been provoking China with the Hong Kong rebellion, with the trade surplus, with the 25% tariffs on everything. They've been constantly provoking China. So ultimately, they come into the room and they sit down and they negotiate how the world is going to go into the future. And the Chinese have refused. Their AI models telling them, no, all we got to do is buy time. So now what this guy is saying, he's saying, look at the South China Sea. What we're going to do is basically use our giant U.S. Navy to choke them. In other words, to choke them off in the South China Sea, in which that's like 80-90% of where they get their oil, where they able to ship goods, this and that we're going to create, and this is what he says. He says it's going to be a manufactured war by basically the West, the Zionists, the people that control the money machine, to force the Chinese to actually sit down and talk to us on how we're going to go into the future. And he goes, the way they're going to do it, they're going to choke the shit out of them. They're going to use the U.S. Navy aircraft carriers, and they're going to bottle it up, and they're going to force the Chinese to do one of 2 things. Either they're going to sit down and they're going to talk to us, and then he goes into a Marshall Plan. He actually talks about that this economic depression is actually going to be over really quick, like by the end of the year, because the Chinese are going to be forced to sit down, and then our Team America Jew Zionist and our WASP people are going to get together with the Chinese, and they're going to say, how do we jointly rule the world for the next 100 years instead of having this world war? And he talks about a Marshall Plan, the Belt and Road, the whole thing I talked about, hooking up rail lines, connecting all 5 different continents. He thinks that the beginning of the Marshall Plan is actually going to start in the Middle East, which he says is completely devastated. There's like no building that's not been blown up or shot up. I mean, outside of maybe places like Jordan or Israel or Saudi Arabia, I mean, everything's had a bomb in it. This is completely devastated. I mean, his images of that. Right. So let me finish this up. 30 seconds more.
If I may, okay, because you've been going for 20 minutes. So,
well, I'm trying to give you the overview.
Oh, yeah. I just wanted to give you a pause so you can breathe. A quick wrap up.
Yeah, 30 seconds. So 30 seconds, this guy says that we're going to choke them off in the South China Sea, and it's going to force them, who they haven't up to this point been willing to sit down. They're going to sit down with us, and then both sides together are going to come up with the way forward for the world. And he goes, that's going to happen by the end of the year. He says, but he did say this will be the greatest depression between now and the end of the year. We are really putting it to the whole world, to the third world, to China. Everybody's suffering, including the United States. And they used AI to game this out. And so there you go. That's about the best good news I can give you. Go ahead.
John or Bruce would like to comment?
So basically, you're telling us we're at war, which is what I've been saying for 2 years. I mean, it's been a state of war for a long time now. It's been war.
Yeah, right.
It's been civil war since 2016. The Chinese will not honor any cooperative deal. They want the top of the pyramid. They will not take second place. I know these people. I live with them. I speak their language. They will not take second place. Any deal they make will be short term, right?
Right.
And
but that's why Kahozi says basically you're about to see the South China Sea being choked off, and we're going to strangle China and either force them to start launching bombs and go to quasi-nuclear war or conventional war, or they're going to sit down at the table. And you know the Chinese, Bruce, it's only when you got a gun pointed at their head are they actually going to be able to sit down and communicate with you. Go ahead.
From a different point of angle, that sentence didn't really make sense. The Australian government is pushing for a investigation into the Wuhan lab and all that, and that's upset the Chinese. Not a trade war, however, from a different point of view, countries will probably stop engaging with the Chinese, which could cause them to have an economic collapse because everything's made in China and people stop buying from China. You see what I'm going? Yeah, Bruce, go ahead.
That's a Monty. That's the flip side of the coin of what this guy says. He goes, if the Chinese don't sit down and negotiate with the Western powers, the Jews who basically got control of the magical money machine, if they don't sit down, and in fact it's multi-layer, they're gonna negotiate intellectual property rights, they're gonna negotiate trade, the Marshall Plan. But he says if they do not do that, then what you're looking at, and it's even showing up in like North Korea, then they're going to pull their allies back, which he says are Russia, North Korea, lots of others. But then we pull all our allies in, all the BRICS nations that you're talking about. But then we pull our allies in, which is basically going to be India, South Korea. And so we're racing to the brink of a major, like World War III. And he broke down the different nations that are going to break different ways on this whole construct that we're talking about. And so if you go along with the Watchman, and it's basically, the four horses of the apocalypse, and that the coronavirus is the crown of the white horse. The next horse is a red horse. So this Kahozi guy might be wrong. The Chinese, Bruce might be right. The Chinese are not going to sit down and negotiate. They would rather go to war than negotiate a settlement.
That's actually not what I said. I said they won't accept a fixed resolution. Their ultimate goal is to be at the top of the pyramid to rule the world. When you think of the Chinese,
that's what he says. Yeah, that's what Kahozi says. Go ahead.
I'm good.
Well, thank you for
John
coming
Z.
to Planet Colin. Go ahead, John.
John C. You're military desk. Is that what we're actually looking at? Do you think that we're actually looking at an asymmetrical war, and that's what this is all about? All this crazy coronavirus. Go ahead.
Can you tell the listeners what an asymmetrical war is?
It's basically an unconventional type of war. It's like, let me put it to you the best way I can. Okay, so there's this fighting strategy called Aikido, and it's where you use the force and weight of an opponent against them. So you let them throw the punch, but you don't absorb the punch. What you do is you actually take the energy of the punch, and you're able to pull that person using the energy they've already expended, and then basically flip them on their back or snap their neck or do whatever. In fact, the great and mighty king of Mother Russia, he's actually very good at that type of warfare. He can use his hands and feet. He knows about Aikido. It's a different type of warfare. So it's not like you fight an open battle where you send like a bomb or a missile. In fact, Kahogi, whatever this guy's name is that did one on Rick Wiles, he goes, it's not going to be nuclear weapons destroying cities. It's not going to be conventional bombs or invasion. Like, you're going to have like 100 million Chinese come over here and, have a big gunfight with like, 150 million American gun owners who all got like 10 guns in their house. That's not going to happen. We're not going to occupy them. They're not going to occupy us. But it's going to be an informational, political type of strategic war. So it's like you go to war with somebody, but instead of bombing, instead of using, here's the best analogy. Instead of using like a missile to fly and then to blow up their electrical plant and basically cut the electrical power in a country, you send in 3 or 4 guys with, laser rifles or 88 cal anti aircraft fire, and you cut their transmission lines between Portland and Seattle, and you kill their electricity that way. It's asymmetrical. It's a couple of guys. Well, yeah, John Z.
Huh?
No, John Z. What's asymmetrical warfare? You know them.
Pack
Go ahead.
88s, huh? Oh, yeah. I didn't know they still had those around. That's quite something.
No, I just made it up. I make a lot of stuff up. But John Z, asymmetrical warfare. Go ahead.
I was nice enough to put it in the chat for you. I'll read it out loud for everyone. Asymmetrical warfare is military conflict fought between 2 armies of greatly unequal size and power. The disparity is so extreme that traditional warfare cannot be waged. Instead, the weaker force tends to rely on guerrilla tactics meant to weaken the larger force's resolve to continue fighting over time. This is not asymmetrical warfare. In fact, this is business. This is business as usual. And if you think that the idea is to throw chemicals and virus bombs at each other's countries, and that's how we're going to do warfare nowadays, I suppose you could do it once in a while. But the problem with that is that that's just as bad as a nuclear war, because guess what? You're going to kill everything and everything at one. It doesn't matter.
You also have the economic playing field as well, because the $22 trillion in debt, the United States government, and correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't China own 2/3 of that debt because they sold it off or something like that? And and so we're definitely in the end times, because from my perspective, I don't see depopulation, because you need a herd to sap energy off. And if you kill everybody, like a nuclear bomb, and you destroy everything, and you've got the Gobi Desert, which is like, that's not a nice place to live. Then you have the element of economic sanctions and everything else like that, where the economy was collapsing. The signs of the economy was collapsing at the end of last year. And so I think we're seeing, because we've known there's sort of been a battle going on behind the curtain. The curtain's been drawn, and we can actually see what's going. It's now unfolding slowly in the mainstream media, if I can put it that way.
The only concerning thing that I heard when you were talking about that article, HiJacker, and it's going to sound silly, and it's going to sound pretty obvious, but the only thing that actually concerns me is the guy saying that invasion is not on the table, because that's the only way you can win a war. There has to be boots on the ground.
Well, no, he said.
Wait, hold on,
Okay.
hold on. And the reason why I say that is because the oldest trick, right, is, hey, don't worry, we're not going to do this, and you turn around and you do it anyway.
Yeah. Question for Bruce, actually. Can you see the Chinese Communist Party? Because I know that they've brainwashed their population, so it's just the commies at the top. Would they try and use a scenario where they're the saviors of the world?
Yeah, and I think that the United Nations is trying to support that propaganda. The big question on my mind is to what degree had the deep state, which was the American deep state, which was run from 89 until Donald Trump, so 2017, January 21st, he took office. It was run, the deep state was, America was run by George Bush Sr. The stories I'm hearing now are just outrageous. I mean, he would take Obama in a room and call him the N-word. You're going to do what you're told to do. And I'm not making Obama out to sound like a good guy here who got bullied. I mean, he was a scumbag, right? But a little bit of independent thinking. So when you look at the Clintons and what they did in the 90s and the very special relationship Uncle Billy had with the Chinese, and he's alleged to have given them military secrets and technology, I wonder if the plan all along wasn't to shift everything over to the Chinese model to bring in global communism for the New World Order. And that's part of what Trump stopped. So that's the big question on my mind, because, and again, we're talking about military tactics here. This is the course that HiJacker set us on. And so what you got to wonder now, and I don't want to give people sleepless nights or anything, I don't want to be the fear porn guy, but you got to wonder if there's any Benedict Arnolds in our military that would be working, portions of our military that would be working with the Chinese against a proper American response to Chinese aggression.
Yeah, right, Bruce. Kogi,
Jacker, settle down. I mean, let other people speak, man. You've dominated.
All right, go ahead.
If I may. I had my thought. That is a possibility because they may be dazzled with dollar signs and power and everything else like that. David Rockefeller, the person that everyone rejoiced when he died, which was fascinating time in history where the most forgiving, compassionate. I'm not sure the Dalai Lama said this, but I'm sure he said David Rockefeller. Yes, we're at that level of no compassion for David Rockefeller. I think it was David Rockefeller. He wrote in his memoirs when he went to China, and he basically said, "This is the perfect model for society." But that's the cabal action idea of they're trying to, lock down and everything else. Like, go ahead, sir.
There's lots of signs out there. Pierre, for those of you who don't know the history of waking China up and bringing it into the world, it didn't begin with Kissinger. The first Illuminati man in was Pierre Trudeau, the Canadian Prime Minister at the time. And Pierre Trudeau had spent a lot of time in China before he got into politics when he was in his 20s. He loved that communist culture. And his son, Justin, speaks quite favorably of it. He's made some really outrageous statements. And when called to task on what he said, he recontextualizes. He said, well, I didn't mean I enjoy dictatorships, but what I'm saying is they can turn a giant economy like theirs on the head of a pin 180 degrees overnight. Our system is just, belabored with months and years of committees and approval processes. But really, we all know what he meant. He loves the Chinese model. So in my mind, I think that the Chinese were poised and that the World Health Organization, the World Health Organization has been praising China for their response to coronavirus and, really trying to set them up as the heroes in all of this. And really, they're the villains. They clearly released the virus. So I don't know. These are heady times to be alive, right? I'm glad I live where I live. Nobody's going to bother Costa Rica.
Yeah, well, it's like even if it was released accidentally, China didn't contain it. For one theory that was put forward, now I have no idea if this is true or not, but in hindsight, you could see it unfolding. So it may be just a synchronistic coincidence, but China saw how it was affecting their economy, and so somehow they let the virus out of their country, so everyone else would get down to their level as well, causing havoc. So China wouldn't be below. From what was Bruce saying, is the Chinese communists have this strange thing, like even they think they're instead of the out of Africa idea, it's the out of China idea. So they think the whole world is theirs anyway, and they want to control everything, and they don't like comedy, dissent, or just any critique at all. If you try and speak out against the government in Beijing and see how long you last.
Yeah.
That's
To go back to what Bruce was saying about Benedict Arnold's, and by the way, that's one of the worst things you can be in life. Besides, I think like there's one or two other things that top being a traitor. But when you start thinking about traitors within your own country, you start getting into the world of spycraft and all the James Bond stuff, right? And this is why it's super difficult to analyze, dissect, and try to come up with any narrative or to game this stuff out, is because this doesn't happen inside of a vacuum. You have economics, you have politics, you have military, you have civilians, you have committees, you have spies, you have traitors. There's so many things that go on in life that people, I guess, they don't really think about when they start looking into stuff like this. Don't get me wrong. It's great to see something from a certain perspective, because that's the only way you get an idea of what's coming at all, if at all.
right. Well, John Z. So this is what this basically this Hoagie guy. I can't say his name. Somebody needs to get a hold of his name. Anyways, this is basically what he's saying, is that the Zionist masters basically had control. They were the one running the operation to supplant the American economy, manufacturing base. They moved it all to China. They all became billionaires. I mean, billionaires was not even our lexicon up until like 1995. Very rarely did we ever hear of a billionaire. So what they did is they moved it. But what what this Hoagie guy is basically saying is that they were able to rule over them for a while. But after a while, the Han Chinese, or Han, whatever you want to call them, they bucked up against their Zionist masters. And so what's basically happened, what this guy is saying, is that split, they realized that the Chinese were getting ready to run away with the world's economy. And he even says that is the reason why the B-1 visas and all the immigration coming into the United States is that we're actually trying to grow the population and all the economic complexity, to be able to go up against 1.4 billion Chinese. But what he says is that a split has happened, and now that the Zionists basically realize they're going to lose their magical money machine, a reserve currency of the world, and that Chinese, by the way, he also did mention that the only currency on the earth, other words, the dollar, is a reserve currency of the earth. Every currency is actually tied to the dollar. What this guy mentioned, he goes, when they actually joined the most favored nation trade status, Newt Gingrich, Bill Clinton, they actually did it. The one thing the Chinese held out is their currency, not to peg it to the dollar. And so the only other country in the world that can print unlimited money, even though it might only be used in Asia or in China, is help me out, Bruce. What is the Chinese currency?
Yuan.
They have two. They have two. They have the RMB for international trade, and they have the yuan for domestic use.
Right. And that, in the last 24 hours or 48 hours, they said we are not going to tie this, we're not going to peg it to the dollar. And so that's the only currency in the world. So we're looking at a worldwide fight for dominance, economic, military dominance of the earth between these two powers.
John, before you go, very quick, I just want to add a small sentence that, but the economic system on this planet is collapsing. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it is.
You got a bit of a hot mic there, John. I know you're at work now. You got to, just turn down your mic a little bit, your mic volume. Is it just me hearing that, or does everybody agree?
Yeah, it was starting to hurt my ear. So only the volume, not the dulcet tones. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah. So the thing about this whole thing is split. You've heard the common the common terminology, how the military is 10, 20 years ahead. Realize whatever this is, it didn't get settled in the last 24 hours. This is something that's been coming for, I don't know, I'd say better part of 3 decades.
Time. Yeah. Well, if I may, would you say it's in a way linked to the Berlin Wall collapsing?
Yeah, sure, you could throw it in there, but
it's not the catalyst, but it's part of it. Yeah,
this idea that they've just today, or last Tuesday or whatever, when something like this comes up, the writing's on the wall for years, and I dare say that the decision was made a long time ago. It's just making print 20 years now. So
we're seeing it now. That's what we're like, from the Wu perspective. Everything's going to be unveiled, and so what we're seeing is the deep states. Because from my perspective, there isn't just one small group of people controlling the world. There's I'm going to pick a number 5 groups of people that have a truce with each other, and they're trying to control the world so everyone is happy and got power. What we could be seeing is those 5 groups in this example are actually a civil war against each other. And Trump's sort of a major move in that, because he's just gone, no, even though he's not aware about the 5 groups. But China seems to be on the back foot. And it'll be interesting to see if in the mainstream that Russia joins the United States.
Right. So Kahogi, or whatever his name is, he actually jumps in this fight. And he basically says, this is basically the division of what this asymmetrical war is about, is that the Chinese believe that in 3 to 5 years, they will be the dominant power, like what Bruce MacDonald talked about. They want to be on top of the pyramid. They're going to be the, basically the superpower of the earth, versus the Zionist, the Jews, the magical money machine, the United States on the other side. And so what's happened is that the Americans under Trump realize that they're going to be eclipsed if they allow this economic model to go along, that the Chinese will win out. They are numbers people. They got the game of Go. I mean, it's the way their minds work. It's the way they interact. They do believe they're like the dominant race. They are really racist. I mean, even against other Asians. And so that we had to hit them now and make them negotiate while we had the economic and military and naval power. And so what this Kahogi's guy is saying is that this is a way to force the Chinese to come to the table now, while we're strong enough to where if we do have a global World War III, we're able to crush them. And so he says, what's planned out now, and they're all talking back and forth, all these different, they're talking back and forth on shadow lines or whatever. He says that they're all coming together, and now they're talking about, look, intellectual property, we got to protect. a
Yeah.
Marshall Plan. Go ahead. Go ahead.
What's a pound of lean ground hamburger going for in your neighborhood?
So you can get grass-fed 1 pound hamburger, and I know about this, from a discount food store for about $5-6 a pound, and that would be grass-fed, basically hamburger. Now, if you just want to go like
So
normal,
how do they sell you a quarter pounder at Burger King for $2.90? Right? Like think about
because that's because they have other hamburger basically that's they pump it into a tube. It could be as many as 1,600 cows or 600, either 1,600 or 600 cows. Oh, when they cut the stuff off the bone or whatever, and they pack it up in a tube, um, uh, and they sell that for like $2, $2.50.
yeah.
But we're derailing the program, which we're trying to
No,
figure out the most
I
important
get
thing,
so
what's going on. Go ahead.
Well, not really,
like
because we're seeing
you're
it
not
from
gonna
an
you're not
economic.
gonna you're not gonna be thinking about it too long as you get hungry. That's my point. The war is already on, Jacker. Start, make sure you're prepared. I mean, this thing is in motion. Nothing we do is going to stop it. We can talk it, think we've gamed it out. It'll change tomorrow, but at the end of the day, it's what happens around you day by day that makes your life, right? And that's changing
Yeah,
more dramatic than a
right.
geopolitical
That's
situation.
what Hoagie said. He
If I
said the reason why they wanted this economic collapse is because America had the reserves, they had the magical money machine, they were in the strongest position, and so if they basically brought the world down to like base, like knocking on the street level, you like knock it on asphalt with bare knuckles. Once they brought this whole thing down, that the Chinese would actually be a lot more weakened than the United States, and it would actually give them economic dominance. And so, yeah, no, point well
But
taken. Go ahead.
that's a miscalculation in my mind, because the one thing the Chinese have over America is nobody's going to shed a tear if they lose 50 million people due to starvation. I mean, they've been through it a generation and a half ago, right? Look, I'm just going to say this. You guys receive it as you want. I'm not trying to hurt anybody's patriotic feelings. By today's economic system and the way it operates, in any fair game, the Chinese win. They work harder. They're smarter on average. They're smarter than any other people in the world. I mean, Jesse Eisenberg, when he's playing Mark Zuckerberg in the movie that Jonathan Demme did called The Social Network. If you guys ever saw that, I think it won the Oscar or something that year. He just blurts out in one of the scenes in one of the scenes in the movie, he's talking to his girlfriend. He said, the Chinese have more geniuses in their country than any other country has anything else, right? Like engineers, whatever. I mean, they're very, very smart people. And somehow the mixture of Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism has made work a sacrament for them in a way that would make a Calvinist look lazy. In any fair game, they win. Okay? The only way to deal it, and my question is this: why are we still even playing the who's going to run the game world? Why aren't we following Trump's original plan and going back to a more isolated economy and only trading for what we need in North America and building everything ourselves, our own computers, our own cars, everything? I don't understand this.
I would say the corporations who sometimes generate more money than a small country don't want to lose that. I'm going to call it the false globalization, because eventually, if everyone's nice, we can become interconnected globally and everyone wins. What we have been being pushed forward, dare I say, since 1990, this idea of globalism, but it's in a very small idea, which is the cabal or black hats or the economic hitman type thing, and it's not working because the idea was to get everyone dependent on everyone else. So Australia could just grow wheat and then have to trade with everybody else. That's why manufacturing's all gone to China, which I find interesting. If China is going to be a strong economic powerhouse, if everyone else doesn't have money, how will they buy their products? Now, I'm sure there's more with incentives and loans and everything else like that. But if vote with your wallet. If you don't like something, don't buy it, type thing. You can see that in popular culture where people keep not buying Star Wars films. But I don't see, and especially, oh geez, oh there's a 2-hour show. Oh yeah, Doctor Who. There you go. Oh, and hello,
you're right, Monty. Right. No, what Bruce was saying is that the basically the IQ of the Chinese, their worth ethnic, so they are dominating, and they did realize that they are going to basically dominate in 4 or 5 years. And so, I mean, think about this: they basically graduate more PhDs in Beijing than the United States graduates engineers in the whole United States. And so, yeah, and that's what's basically the threat. That's what's created this war, is that the Zionists realize that they're basically being overwhelmed. The Han Chinese have broken their chains. They got the economy. They got the manufacturing. They got it all. They got the intellect. And so that's why they created this whole coronavirus, this whole war.
One problem is that they're from a Communist Party country where there's that mindset.
That is the problem. That is the problem.
Anyone on this call and listening, if you had insane Chinese person that has a higher intellect, but it's like you have to do everything for the party, communism isn't fair. Like Enemy at the Gates. I know I'm bringing up a movie, but there was a bit where I think it's Jude Law. What are the laws anyway? He comes out because the two main protagonists are in love with the same girl, and that points out that if you bring love into the communist ideology, it doesn't work because it's not fair. I stepped on somebody there. Was it John or Bruce? I think John.
Yeah. So. HiJacker, yeah, you're right. They got more people, they're smarter, they got the better economy, they got the better plan. Okay, so they had some masters or whatever, and they got out from under the deal, and now their masters want to put them down and shame them, right? I'm not saying that it can happen, but again, war is usually for a reason. What's the reason here?
Well,
the Zionists, the Jews, the magical money machine, John. That's what it's all about. It's about the damn money.
Yeah, but the magical
money.
But the magical money machine is collapsing on its own weight because it doesn't work.
Well, it's a world reserve currency, like he said.
Actually, on Tuesday,
that's what the war's about.
Yeah, in my local service station or petrol station or gas station, however you want to say it, where I get fuel for my car, it was 98 point something cents a litre. I believe it's 3.4 litres per gallon. You do the math. The next day, it jumped 30 cents. It went up to $1.19 per litre.
What this Kogi guy is saying, he does numbers. He runs the #1 accounting firm in the world. Worldwide, doesn't matter if it's Chinese.
There's the break.
We have the break.
Really?
Thank you, HiJacker. Yep. It's 56 or 57. Yeah, I know. It just flew by. Remember where you are, HiJacker. We'll come back. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And this is Planet Collingwood. We'll be back after this break. Stick around and just be awesome. Thank you, the mighty Nighthawk. Always remembered because he's still on air and it's good to hear his voice. I still maintain he's on a cloud somewhere chuckling, eating ribs, going, you people are weird. You're listening to Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. This is Planet Collingwood, Open Round Table. If you're on Skype, it is Monty_Dean. Just send me a message. I'll add you to the call. And if you're lucky enough to be one of my contacts, I'm not going to stalk you. I'm lazy. But yeah, just drop a note, and I'll add you to the call, and you'll be able to hang out with Bruce MacDonald, John Z, and the HiJacker. HiJacker. Oh, also, Revolution Radio is 100% listener supported, and we thrive on your donations. So if you enjoy the last hour, go to the website freedomslips.com and/or revolution.radio and donate what you can. We don't accept children. I've got a cat. That's enough. And then pop into the chat room. Unfortunately, I'm not in the chat room because cookies and stuff. And so I'm not going to spend 45 minutes trying to get in. So hello, chat room. I love you, but from afar. Also, we're all 100% volunteer as well. So any donation can help. And HiJacker, do you remember your thought just before we went to the break?
Yeah. So basically a synopsis of what we talked about in the last hour. This does look like it's like an asymmetrical war between two major competing Kabbalist type powers on the earth. One is the Chinese, the other is the Zionist, the British, the Americans, basically trying to protect their magical money machine. And so, it looks like what this coronavirus is, what this economic depression is, it had to happen. This guy, Corona, or Koji, he was on True News. Just go to truenews.com. An hour and a half interview with his billionaire, who's got the largest accounting firm in the world. He's got the largest intellectual property firm. He knows Jimmy Carter, Biden. He knows all these people. And basically he says, what we're involved in is an asymmetrical warfare with China. China actually broke away. They were actually under control of the Zionists, but they thought they could rule the world, which taps into what Bruce MacDonald says about the psyche of the Han Chinese. They believe they are the dominant power. They're smarter. They should rule the world. Anyways, so what we're looking at is like an asymmetrical warfare. And if the best word picture I can give you is what's happening now, because this Koji says this thing's going to be over, like at the end of the year. They're both going to negotiate. But so think of about 140 Chinamen, and then think of about a 240-pound American. We basically think that we can actually economically starve them out, go through this economic Great Depression, force them to come to the table, and then Kohoshi is basically saying there's going to be a Marshall Plan, sort of connecting up all 5 continents with a Belt and Road, which I've been preaching about for 15 years, with rail lines, including a tunnel between Alaska and Siberia, a tunnel between Iran and Kumal. Anyways, that's what he's saying is what they're anticipating is going to happen.
HiJacker.
$100 trillion worldwide infrastructure Marshall Plan, and then they're basically the Chinese and the WASP and the Jews are going to sit at the table and work it out. There's not going to be a World War III, but Watchman basically says no. The red horse is going to come out. The fiery red horse.
Okay.
War.
Hi,
Go ahead.
Hey.
Go ahead.
All right. So, a question for you. Whoever this guy is, wherever he came from, why all of a sudden are you taking him as credible instead of Q? Who the hell is this guy?
He's the number one guy who set up an accounting firm that's in like 160 countries.
Why does this make him reputable and not Q or someone else?
Yeah,
Why
accounting is one of the demon license trades.
If he's the top
Is he
accounting
an actuary?
firm, if he's the top intellectual property firm, I mean, come on, John Z. If you're going to trust your books and you're going to open up your books to this Palestinian guy that's like super smart, who's written all these books, who's on all these committees, he knows Kofi Annan. I mean, this guy's an insider. he
He
knows what he
couldn't
knows.
be.
I mean,
He couldn't be
he's like,
portrayed as one. He couldn't be a plant. He couldn't be a fake. It couldn't be fake news. It couldn't be disinformation. Why is it
no, he's
automatically
a
credible?
Palestinian that was a refugee in 1948, in which he wrote his first book was Blankets to Jackets, which his mother basically had to cut up a blanket to make him a coat so he could
So,
go to school in
so you have
Lebanon.
to be an author. You have to be an author to be credible.
He's
I
got
think
a
You
lot
get what
of
I'm saying?
books. He's got a book. We are transitioning from the third revolution, basically industrial revolution world, to the fourth. He talks about 5G, AI, robotics. That's what we're coming into. No, this guy's a real McCoy. He's the piece of the puzzle we didn't get. We are at war with China.
What, yeah. Well, that's been going on for a while, though. And I'm going to throw a curveball. But before that, I'm going to introduce Cortek.
Hello, afternoon.
Cortek,
Hello.
how
Hello,
are you? How are you, my northern chap?
Very well, thanks. I especially like being called knackers. It's always
Oh,
when
yeah,
people
yeah.
bring out those names from
Oh,
the past
go-
that you haven't
go-
heard in about 3 or 4 years. It gives you little smiles and chuckles.
Oh yeah. I
Um,
just like using Australian slang on international radio, where everyone's like, "What the hell's he talking about now?"
I just wanted to ring in and see I wasn't in a time loop at all from the last hour. HiJacker, have you got a link to this video? I mean, I think the best thing is if you think it's any good, like supply the link and let everyone have a look and let them decide that we can move on.
Yeah, really. I mean, Rick Wiles, he knows who I am. He knows about the councils. He never helped me, so I'm actually going to be I'm actually going to be blessing his channel. But just go to True News, TRU News, NEWS, TrueNews.com, and look at I guess it would be yesterday's interview. It's an hour and a half with this multi-billionaire. He's a savant. He's really smart. He's like the smartest person in
Is he a good
Lebanon.
driver?
What's that?
Is he a good driver? Does he hold his head to the side?
Oh, he doesn't drive. He's got people that drive for him.
Okay.
I think that was a
Don't
golfing
you think
reference.
Don't you think? Don't you think?
I gotta say, the moment I hear billionaire and Palestinian in the same descriptive chain, my curiosity goes up.
Of course,
Speaking now of all times.
Same with mine. And
why isn't he?
What
Why
this
is
guy
he
should be
helping
doing?
people?
Right. No, Bruce, you're right. Anybody that actually makes it to a billionaire or gets into this, that's why I watched him to see if he would like shapeshift or something. But
I'm gonna.
this guy gave a lot of good information. A lot of good information.
I'm gonna give you my context on everything that's going on now. Okay. And I appreciate you bringing this guy to the round table. It sounds real interesting. I'll probably listen to it when I go to sleep tonight. But the one thing we have to realize is we're at war right now, right? We're at war. And the first casualty of war, according to Winston Churchill, is the truth. So you're going to see disinformation everywhere. And America is probably the most open country in the world in terms of receiving information from outside of its borders and allowing freedom of speech within its borders. I don't think there's any country even remotely like America. Certainly not Canada. Same history, same continent, but Canada screwed it up. Canada's a gulag. Enough about that. But you got to, everything you see now, you got to ask yourself, where's this guy coming from? Kerry Cassidy did a fantastic 2-part interview, hour and a half each part, with a fellow by the name of Cyrus Parsons, who's also an expert on China. He lived there. He's a Qigong master and a genius in many ways, and also quite enlightened, quite enlightened indeed. And he said something similar, that there is a huge problem with the AIs right now. You see, I've been in computing my whole life, and I do not believe in artificial intelligence. I'll tell you right now, there's no such thing. You may be able to create a synthetic host that can have consciousness graft onto it, something in the fourth dimension that is sentient. It can graft onto the machine and express itself through the machine. But based on what I know about computers, there's no such thing as artificial intelligence. And
No, that's
everybody's
what we're
going in.
talking about. Bruce, we're talking about fourth dimensional beings being able to, whether it's the gin, electricity, or whatever, they're coming in
Yeah.
through their computer.
Sure.
I mean, think about
And
it.
you know why? You know why?
You can click on a
an
website.
indication.
Go ahead.
I'll give you an indication of the degree to how much I have actually thought about this. Breaching the sanctity of human space has been a major agenda of the Satanists for over 100 years now. When you look at what Crowley and Jack Parsons, who started Jet Propulsion Laboratories for NASA, and all those guys were into, with the magic and everything, it was all about bringing these entities into the world, and to see that this philosophy, which is so widespread now, this is what I mean when I talk about institutional Satanism. It's something that really is part of the dark arts. It's not good for human beings. It's blatantly obvious even to native people living on a reserve, but stupid white people in first world countries can't figure out that this stuff is dangerous. I don't need a Bible to tell me this. It's dangerous. It's not organic. It's not part of what we are. This has been the name of the game since day one. Ever since they started this big push on the Albert Pike program, and they're literally trying to bring hell on earth. Okay, they're trying to bring all these dimensions in. I don't know what the plan is. I mean, they have fealty with these other races, and they're going to be feted as human kings. But what we're witnessing in all of this, folks, and one of the things you have to keep your mind focused on, this is the betrayal of human beings by other human beings. We talk about traitors, like Benedict Arnold is a famous one in American history. We talked about traitors earlier when we talked about the deep state relationship under the 30 years of tutelage and stewardship by George Bush Sr. What we're talking about here is people who are traitors to the actual human race, not just a nation or a religion or an ethnicity. Like they're consciously betraying the human race. The first person to speak about this that I ever encountered was Alex Collier way back in the 90s, and he's an Andromedan contactee, for those of you who don't know who he is. I think JP's had him on Rev Radio a few times.
Yes.
So it doesn't. So that when we talk about AI, it's interesting to me that in most instances you take a religiously neutral topic and make it religious. Like when you look at geopolitics, you're always trying to project the Bible onto it. This one's low-hanging fruit for biblical correlations in terms of the wickedness from other dimensions coming into this world. But in this particular example, you stay with the technology but it's, of all the things you speak about, this is the one that morphs into the Bible the most. You see where I'm going with that?
Yeah, no, Bruce, just think about this. So I'm in Washington State. I'm talking to you right now in real time, less than one split second. You're actually getting this communication probably through cable. 95 or 98% of internet traffic is through cable. And so you're in Costa Rica. And so we're talking to one another. And so within one split second of me talking, you actually get it. So what is that? That is not even scientific. That's not even the speed of light. So how does that work? I mean, think about it. Well, think about what basically the internet is, how we're able to communicate. I mean, are we talking Jen? Are we talking, what are we talking? What kind of technology is this? It's not fiber optic.
It's demonic. We're going completely in the wrong direction. There was already a network on this planet. There was an organic network. You know, Aboriginals figured it out. They could communicate over vast distances. In India, they used to have guys, this is like 300-400 years ago, they used to have yogis that were like telegraph shops. So you would go and see the yogi in his hut. You would give him a few rupees, and he would telepathically send a message to your family 1,000 kilometers away in another part of India to let them know that an uncle died.
What year was this?
So
Sounds amazing.
oh, Sadhguru talks about this stuff all the time on his YouTube channel. Everything we're doing and bringing into the world now is a metaphor, a bad metaphor for what God, the Creator, already gave us. We're so far going in the wrong direction. It isn't funny.
That's also the song lines. Sorry,
song lines. They did. They searched what else? Not song lines. Not meridian line. Anyway, the geomagnetic grid on the planet, and if there's a line straight through southern England where over 1,000 years, all different churches were built along it. And I can't remember the name of it. I do apologize. It has been said that the internet is a manifestation of what Bruce is talking about, that telepathy sort of network. However, it's manifested on the material side of things, and it was created to be used as a weapon by the black hats, but it's backfired. And that's why you can probably see in Chaos, where people still ask me questions where they've got the Library of Atlantis at their fingertips. However, I thought through. Even if you go on and try and do research on the internet, most people just stop at Wikipedia. Wikipedia is a good start because there's so much. Yeah, I still praise Alec Jones for the name InfoWars. It is all about information and ideas.
Yeah. I like Wikipedia for the first paragraph of any topic. When you get into the supporting material, it goes deep. But when you just want that Encyclopedia Britannica definition of something, their first paragraph on something is usually pretty good.
It's pretty amazing.
And yeah. Well, it's collaborative. That's why people can contest what's put there, right?
Any big project that has everyone involved will work, whether it's global politics or your national or local politics. If you have everyone involved, maybe blockchain or whatever, it will work.
Yeah.
Sorry, you go on.
I just had two listeners, John Wayne, not the actor, and Lord Tones, ley lines. That's what I was looking for. Which is a natural grid around the planet. I think Uluru or Ayers Rock, depending where you want to sit, is part of that. And there's also chakras on the planet. Interesting enough about Uluru, just as a sidestep, that seems to be female energy. And there's also, I think it's the Bunga Bungles. It's a very interesting name. So there's another place just very close, which is the male energy. So it's not both. They're sort of separated in the heart of Australia. Go ahead.
Apparently, there's one ley line that runs through the US at some point, and every single jail going across from east to west in the US, every single jail that's on that line has the death penalty, and is almost like the idea is almost feeding that energy into that ley line.
Yeah, it's interesting when you have a new friend come up and
that's pretty good stuff. That's pretty good stuff with Cortek.
It's interesting.
It's true. It's there. You can check it out.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's that type of information that helps people start opening their mind to different concepts. It's like, well, yeah, all that's humbuggery. That doesn't make sense. Yeah, but here's 58 penitentiaries all on the same line across the United States, and it starts like mathematically going, well, hang on, that's a bit weird. Another weird thing is, for whatever reason, most nuclear power plants, I think they're on ley lines, but most of them are on earthquake fault lines or near the sea.
Great planning,
what idiot? Yeah, what idiot? It's like, like Fukushima. Oh, we'll just put it on the edge in an earthquake-prone country right near the sea. Nothing will happen. I know, we'll put the 3,000 spent rods on top of the shed. It'll be fine. Idiots.
Yeah, Monty, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking basically, because I don't believe President Trump is a dark heart or he's evil. Let me put it that way. I'm a dark heart. My wife is a light heart. So, a dark heart, they kind of think certain ways, but whatever. But anyways, I don't believe he's evil. So what's going on where he's allowing this? It does appear to be a war with China that's going on, asymmetrical war. And so I'm thinking, he's not an evil person, which he caused all this like 33 million or 34 million people being unemployed, 5 to 15 million small businesses wiped out. And so I'm actually starting to think, like you talked about the ley lines, where all the, power plants, nuclear power plants on all these ley lines. I'm really starting to think that there's another presence among us that are above us. They got anti-grav, they got UFOs, they know about frequencies, they got IQ 100. I'm really starting to think these are the people actually calling the shots on this earth of what's going on.
Yeah, I'm not one of the. I'm not in the camp of total control. They manipulate and guide, and if there was total control, we would be talking right now on air with a website. Totally. So they can't really force us.
No, you're a program. No, Monty, you, me, Deacon, Bruce MacDonald. It doesn't matter what. We're so limited in our reach. That they actually use this as a program to actually test, what basically the smartest monkeys know. So,
a variable. I think variable's a better way of saying it. They probably try and put it into a program. It's interesting though. Like in most of my life, the people that I do know, their subconscious is awake, if I can put it that way, where they know something's wrong and they see it, but there's an element of fear of they have to break out of the paradigm that the mainstream puts forward. What we're seeing this year is that paradigm shifting because the mainstream paradigm has just got, what's the term, batshit crazy?
Batshit crazy is the term, I think. Yeah. Well-known phrase or something.
Well, only a couple of days ago, Obamagate was trending on Twitter. Now, I'm sure we may stray on the conversation, but it looks like that someone's trying to take another hit towards Obama and his shenanigans.
Yeah, I saw that too. Concerning the general that was
Flynn,
not convicted. Flynn, yeah.
Yeah. I think now I don't know if it's true or not. I didn't do any investigation of it, but apparently even Donald Trump did hashtag Obamagate. So like you have to, I agree with Joe Rogan. Donald Trump on Twitter is one of the best stand-up comics you've ever seen. He can troll like a mother lover. It's the stuff that he comes up with, or it's one of his team. I don't know if it's him actually on it, but it is fascinating to see as. They in quotation marks, are pushing for what their end result, the backlash or the ramifications and everything, the paradigm they're trying to create is slowly dissolving, if I can put it that way, because there's so many people, like just in the United States, even here in Australia, there were people protesting the lockdown. The police arrested a woman and she had a pram and a young child. That just one example. And so this massive, what we're seeing, or what I'm seeing on my radar, is there is pushback. It's not like China invading Taiwan or something like that, but humanity is pushing back because they, on a basic level, it's not right.
Oh yeah. Well, no, there was you want pushback. Listen to this. I think you got to go to rents.com to actually see the footage. But anyways, so at the California beach, there's like 800 or 900 people, maybe 1,000 people, all lined up, and they're like on the boardwalk, or they're like on the sidewalk, and there's like cops. there's like 2 cops standing between all these 800-900 people. Anyways, this young gal, you probably ought to go ahead and Google it. She takes her surfboard. Of course, she's a good looker in a bikini, and she rolls out, and she walks past these cops who don't do anything, and then she turns around and basically puts her sword down, and basically in her bikini, she says to all the 800, 900 people, "What are you doing? This is our beach. We can take it. They can't arrest us all. Can't arrest us all. There's only 2 of them."
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden, you start to see the lines break. And then she basically picks up her surfboard. It's on cell phone camera or whatever. And she starts to go into the water. And then all of a sudden, you see the herd of 800-900 people just like rush the beach right past the 2 cops. They don't do anything. And next thing you know, everybody's in the water. Yeah, that's pushback.
Yeah, there's a movie called Bugs, and it's about bugs, but there's a group of locusts. I think locusts or cicadas, however you want to say it. They keep getting a cut from the ants, and the ants do all the work. There is a scene, and I don't remember the brother's name in the film, but you'll recognize him. He's in Gotham, and he was in Spin City, and you'll recognize the voice and the actor if you need to. And Kevin Spacey's the other one. Now, skip over all the crap about Kevin Spacey, but there is a bar scene where he points out that he gets 1 seed and he hits a guy. It's like, see, that's fine. If one, it's that whole thing about if 1 ant stands up against him, and he points out visually, like, and now if 1 ant stands up, they'll all stand up, and he takes the valve off, and about 400 seeds just pour into the bar and knock everyone over. And it's a good illustration of how control works. And that's exactly what you just said there with the woman and the surfboard. Interesting enough, in Van Nuys, to try and stop people going out, they filled in a skate park with sand. And that just made everyone go, well, we're in Nazi Germany now. And they're doing ridiculous things, and people are waking up on the general public level.
Yeah, they made the mistake basically in season. And so what I mean by that is that the sun's coming through now. And of course, I'm a flat earther. And so the sun's coming through. And so it's a very powerful entity, whatever it is. It's only like 35 miles across, maybe 1,000, 2,000 miles up. But thank God that this whole coronavirus hit during the spring. They should have done this during the fall, but no, everybody's coming out now. No, it's like this whole thing. The sun is actually burning out the coronavirus. I mean, it's actually burning.
It heats up, and you get vitamin D, which is essential for the human body. Interesting enough, it made a correlation there. Thank you, HiJacker. That most of the population would be in the northern hemisphere or the inner ring. I'm playing both sides of the globe, flat Earth. I'm just being fair. Which is going into summer, which is now for Cortek and I, we're going into winter, where you have colds and flus and coughs anyway. And it's like we won't know if anyone has the Rona, as it's called on the streets, because we could have smoker's cough, just a normal flu. But you know what I'm saying, Cortek.
Is the deal that even doctors can't really tell the difference, or can't really define the difference between deep pneumonia and this COVID label?
Now we're getting in a bit of David Icke territory.
The
problem is, according to David Icke, take it for whatever it is, they can't isolate the virus, and so they're going on symptoms, which 98% of the symptoms are exactly the same as a cold, flu, or emphysema, or malaria, or whatever it is.
I've seen a couple of doctors come out and say this. It's not just over dying.
And to back that up, just give me a sec, Bruce. To back that up, no one else has died from anything else. They're all died from coronavirus. There's a chicanery going on there because of the medical system is behest to big pharma and control, and so the system is being exposed for being corrupt. Bruce MacDonald, go ahead, please, sir.
Yeah, but they're still doing it. We all know it's a scam, but they're still doing it. You know, and we all know the vaccine is going to be dangerous, but they're going to force it if they keep down this path, right? So, I mean, this is the line in the sand, guys. This is the line in the sand. I don't know what I would be doing if I were in Canada right now. I keep up with my son, and he says he's not going to get that vaccine. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.
They're trying to force it on sportsmen here as well. Saying, if you come into this state to play sport against another team, you're going to have the jab. And it's like, you're trying to sell it. Just name it something a little bit more, pleasant than jab.
There's the slang now. Here's the jab. Interesting enough, even if, let's go with vaccines work and the science is there, it's going to take a decade for it to actually be properly used and tested. If they're doing it less than 18 months, red flags everywhere. Go ahead, Bruce. Sorry to step on you there.
Yeah, what's the weather like there in the U.S.? I mean, it snowed today in Toronto. It's May 13th, or May 12th was today. I lived in Canada most of my life. That never happens. There's no snow in May. And they're talking about tornadoes and hailstorms for the whole summer in Canada.
Wait a minute, Bruce. Did you say it snowed in Toronto?
Yeah.
You know what? It's been cold all over the U.S., even in where I'm at. It's been really cold.
What are you guys alluding to?
On the flip side, Cortek and I will report on our experiences because, 21 Celsius here going into like the end of autumn, which is very rare that in late April it's over 20. At the moment, it's about 15 or 16. So it seems the weather on the world is balanced but out of whack compared to the seasons. Cortek, what's it like up in Sydney?
It's still a bit nippy. It's still kind of cool.
It's becoming cold. Yeah, it's becoming cold, but it should be colder by now. Like here in Melbourne, we had 2 or 3 days of over 20 degrees Celsius in April, and it's like, what's going on?
It's kind of hit and miss. Snow season doesn't start till mid-August or so.
Well, that's late winter.
We've never had really, really well-defined seasons in Australia. Really? Been here this is my 46th year, having a Melbourne winter, and quite frankly, I want to freaking move. But talking to other people as well, where it's been warm here and it's been cold other places, like as Bruce said, Cortek for reference. I'm trying to think now. May would be October, no, September, maybe November. So like by then it shouldn't be that cold in the bigger scheme of things. I'd like to know what Bruce was alluding to bringing this up in the first place. Just that it was rare to have it snow in Toronto, or it was early, or the world is going through different cycles, or what did he mean?
Right on.
There's your answer.
I didn't even hear it. I just came back from your on the
Bruce, the question is, why did you bring it up? Was it just because of seasonal change? Greg?
Well, it's highly, highly unusual. I don't know. I don't know. In my 53 years, I've never heard of snow in May in Canada before. And Toronto's not really a heavy winter city either. Ottawa, where I grew up, Moscow and Ottawa are the 2 coldest capitals in the world. I think Iceland as well. But I mean, when I was growing up in the 70s, the snowbanks were 3 times taller than me at the end of the driveway, right? And there was always a lot of snow. But Toronto, I moved there when I was like 19, turning 20, and they have a very mild winter. And it's because of Lake Ontario. So, this is unheard of. Generally in May, people are getting ready to open their pools if they haven't opened them already. And it's snowing. It's very unusual. Very, very unusual.
I saw a headline today that our poles are doing something strange again. So maybe that has something to do with it.
Well, the last time I checked into that, the North Pole's like, you know what? Canada's awesome and shit, but I'm going to go to Siberia. And that's been over the
Here
like
I
a
go.
century.
About
Yeah.
50 meters a year.
Exactly.
Sneak
Like,
over there. Sneak over there while no one's looking.
for 1,000 years, forever, it's like, I'm going to, oh, it's 1812. I'm going to make a step to the right. Sit here for about 50 years. Now it's like, hey, this is fun. Zoom. This fuels the people that think there's a pole shift where it could be make a difference between a magnetic pole shift and the other one is just the magnets change, which could be almost level as EMP level. But if it's a crustal pole shift like in the movie 2012, we're all stuffed basically. So, but it's interesting to see the data where it's like there seems to be two poles, or the magnetic field is doing something very, very interesting, as well as the sun as well, with the data that we're seeing from that.
Could it not just be eternal movement? Like, to assume that it's a pole shift, it means that there would be something keeping it in place, and this is different to that.
Well, see, now, without upsetting HiJacker, we're talking geothermal and magnetic and solar system and everything else like that.
Cartoons. You're talking cartoons. That's what you're watching.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's also history, but that is full of what's going on there. That a timeline and everything else like that, where two pharaohs are brothers and they're 400 years apart. I'm like, right, okay. So,
but the biggest thing we're talking about is it does look like what this coronavirus is, what this whole pause is, this quarantine. It does look like it is actual war between these two great powers, and that would be.
I would limit it to two.
I would say it's it's one result from whatever's happening, and that civil. Bruce, actually, a leading question for you. There is a civil war going on in the Illuminati cabal, whatever you want to call it. Because like if we bring in the information of let's say Dr. Rowe, that sounds good. Let's give him a promotion, Mr. Rowe, where Trump is part of a certain faction and the Clintons and everyone else is a different faction, and they're trying to fight for control. Bruce, without giving away the ending where the butler did it, what do you see with researching your book, or just what's your point of view?
Oh my God, this book is just diabolical. I'm ashamed to publish it. It's really well done so far. The information, it's like an order of magnitude beyond and more intense than Stardust Ranch, which just keeps selling more books every month it's on market, I might add. I'm living on that book now, and now I'll be able to afford toothpaste. But
living the dream. Living the dream.
Where can people get this said book?
Amazon.com, Stardust Ranch, The Incredible True Story. It should be read before you read the next one, because the next one builds off of it. It really gets into the whole demonic, angelic, extraterrestrial thing, what's really going on, the narrative, the debate we have all the time. Basically, the two poles of this debate are Viking and HiJacker, a religious narrative and an extraterrestrial narrative. Nice. This book answers it all. And fascinating guy. I don't know where to begin talking about the guy. I mean, his grandfather was a rocket scientist in Germany in '33, defected to the United States, and so pre-paper. I don't know. I don't know. Well, paperclip was 45, right? 45, 46. JIOS, Joint Information Operations Services or something, did all that in the U.S. So I've never met anyone like this in my life. I'm starting to understand why the Germans are such extraordinary people. Navy SEAL. And not only did he get through Bud School his first try. Do you guys know about Bud School, like the Navy SEAL training? Okay, so in the enlisted ranks, 90% of people fail. They ring the bell and they quit, right? It's just too painful. In the officer class, about 70% fail. But of the 30% who pass, only about like 2 or 3% of them go through in one try. Meaning you start the program, you finish the program, but what happens to a lot of them, it's so intense that they get severely injured. They have to rest for 3 months, recuperate, and then they can rejoin the training where they left off if they didn't fail any of the programs or quit. He went right through it his first try, and he was 28 years old. You know, the officer people are like 22, 24 if they have a master's degree from West Point or Harvard, and the enlisted people are like 19, 20. So, and then his life just gets extraordinary from there.
Is that
And
because of the physical demands or the
yeah, it's all physical. They break you. They break you, man. He finished Bud School with the martesial bones in his left and right foot broken. You realize how much pain that is when you're jogging every day? He just wouldn't quit. I would not want to get in a fight with this guy, and he's 58 years old. And
Bruce, are you familiar with the SAS, the Australian?
Their families.
Yeah, he has a lot of friends in the SAS. He's done work with them on what they used to call private mercenary work. So he was 7.5 years in the SEALs, 3 years private contracting. He and John Z. By the way, I'll take this opportunity for anybody who's ever had any doubt about what John Z is saying about his past on this radio network. It's all been validated. Okay, so Bob was a Navy SEAL operations officer all through the 90s up till about 97, 98, and he knows the operations John went on, and John Z's for real. You figure out the rest. He's probably been rolled back.
Right.
That's an.
I just want to add, basically, people that are, especially their families, who basically designate these people. You're talking about 14, 16, 18 years old. They already know where their basically path projection is going to go into the officer club or whatever. And so it starts a lot earlier than like 21 or 25 years old. These guys are already on track at like 16 years old. Go ahead.
Then he went over to Switzerland for a while and lived with Billy Meyer and spoke to him every day. He got along really well with Billy. Billy hates Americans, hasn't invited one over for 30 years. A lot of information was given to him. Then for shits and giggles, he got into Palo Mayombe. He blooded into that through the blood-in ritual. That is the dark side of Santeria, by the way. It's a Congolese black magic that came to our part of the world through the slaves, the black slaves in Cuba, and just spread from there. He was prodigious at that. The godfathers who initiated him, he was basically leading the whole LA Palo Mayombe group, doing remote viewing for the Colombian cartels, and he got out of that. They all got arrested. You can't make this stuff up. People are going to have a hard time believing this. This story will be harder to believe than Stardust Ranch, and it's all practical stuff. But it's what he has to say, it's what he's learned, and it's the message he has for the world now. And I feel very fortunate to be given this book. I'm on a real roll here. I'm on a real roll here with the writing. It's hard though. These are hard books to write. I can't explain it, but there's interference. There's all kinds of stuff like this. But anyways, getting back. Look, the biggest Jacker moment, please. The biggest threat to China, the Chinese Communist Party, is the Chinese people. Don't worry about China too much. Don't just listen to what some guy says on True News and come on. Thank you for bringing the information, but distill it a little bit. Think about it a little bit. Ask tough questions of the information. The number one problem in China is the Chinese people. They hate the Chinese Communist Party, right? So they're just waiting for another Tiananmen Square. They're more terrified of their own people now than they are of any external force. And that's the truth about China. And it's because of the heavy hand they govern with. They got away with it for 5,000 years, but now we have the internet. And like I said, the Chinese are geniuses, so they can get around the domain restrictions the government tries to impose so that they can't see websites from other countries and stuff. And they know how the world lives, and they're going, well, why are we treated this way? And so that's their big problem now, not the U.S. or not some alleged Zionist conspiracy out of Israel and Washington.
There's a lot of propaganda coming out of the UK as well to trying to convince the UK populace that it's all about a big war with China and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think the way that the Chinese government handled Wuhan as well just would have woken up a lot of people because they welded people into their apartments. Yeah,
well, there was those stats about the cell phone use or mobile phone use, and
yes,
and people were coming out saying, oh look, people must be dying a lot more than the figures show, but people probably just stamping on their phones because one, they knew that it killed a lot of people. Two, it's kind of communist law to have a phone and it being tracking where you are at all times, and people just maybe had enough of it, over.
Well, that is a possibility as well, because if they've seen how they're like, I've seen footage of certain people saying our government will save us, and then they would have seen how other people have been treated, as well as HiJacker. I think you'll be able to add to this the persecution of religion, or well, just any religion, but the way they treat Christians, the way they treat Muslims, that's come out where there's camps and everything else like that. And just to bring in a bit of woo-woo old school kind of crap, they've built cities that hold 20 million people and they're empty. Like, what is going on in China?
Yeah, there's some high weirdness going there. And look, the cabal's been in there since the beginning of the communist revolution, right? I mean, don't think that they've really been isolated. They had some profound influence already in there, and so that's going on. The Jews have always been in China. There's Chinese Jews. They're called the Kaifan. You can research that. There's some fascinating stuff on them. And in typical Jewish fashion, the two brothers within this Kaifan community became the richest people in China in like 1100 AD, and they made all their money on prostitution. They opened brothels everywhere, and their number one social campaign was to get the Taoist scriptures squashed. And I'm not trying to besmirch Jews, but this pattern is coming up too much. What you need to realize about these people, and this is what really is going on in the world now, okay? I'm going to go back to the way I was talking about Trump some time ago. I still think he's doing a lot of good things, way better than Hillary, and all of that stuff. But here's what I think is going on, because Monty asked a question before I started talking about my books and all of this stuff. Is there infighting at the upper circles? Well, when you're in a war, at certain stages of the war, the enemy of your enemy is your friend. When that enemy is destroyed, the enemy who was the enemy of your enemy is no longer your friend. Okay? So now they're jostling for the seat of power. Who's going to run the world? Is it going to be this quasi-Marxist monster, cobbled together with the United Nations and the World Health Organization and, these ridiculous organizations that put ridiculous people in there? I mean, we're talking about an organization that named Saudis as the head of the United Nations Human Rights Committee. Think about that. Just really let that sink in for a bit, okay?
Yeah.
So they're completely useless. I think it's always been about the biblical plan. I don't call it a prophecy. I agree with Bill Grant on that. It's a plan, and it's really about seating the seat of power becoming Jerusalem. It's a very special place for a lot of these people. It's a special place for Donald Trump. Realize that for the Freemasons, the greatest builder of all time was King Solomon, the builder of the temple of the first temple of Solomon, which is alleged to have been built by demons. Solomon was given a special signet and a ring, and he could control the demons. I think those are extraterrestrials, by the way. And when you look at a lot of another thing I learned writing this book is, I've learned a lot about Pala Mayombe. I could probably kill somebody with a spell now in 24 hours. I'm not joking. I got all the secret books. I've read them, and I hope there's no Pala Mayombe Tatas listening offended by that. I respect the path. I have nothing disrespectful to say about it. but it's a systems of numbers and words. It's basically an African Kabbalah. It's very interesting how all of this stuff lines up, right? What we have to realize is that there's two kinds of Jew in the world, okay? There's those who follow the Torah, and they are the light of the path. They are beautiful people. They can illuminate a community if they live by that book, and they follow the observances and the diet, and it's a path to God, just like meditation, just like Christian prayer. It's a path to God. I'll say no more. It's beautiful, and the world was blessed with this Torah. Then you get this other sort of statehood magic stuff. Like King Solomon was not a prophet. Realize that. He's not recognized as a prophet. This is part of the social political history of the Israelites, not the prophetic lineage. And yet he brings in all of this other stuff, which is a bigger part of the Kabbalistic and Talmudic religion that 95% of Jews follow today. Now, if what I'm saying sounds anti-Semitic, I promise you, you can find Torah Jews in Israel saying the exact same thing I'm saying. Okay? Exact same thing.
And they get persecuted by the Israeli government.
Yeah, they do. And we are now in that point of human history where everything that's been hidden is going to be revealed to us. This is true in the Bible. And so this is why I'm having the opportunity to write all these books now. It's time for them to come out. And we're going to see the kind of world we've been living in. And here's what's going to happen, and this is how the golden age is going to happen. The devil is going to scare people back to God. And look, and I know that sounds like a horrible thing to say, but the worst place you can be is spiritually dead. At least the people who worship the dark spirits know that they live in a spiritual reality, a trans-dimensional reality, right? And because they've created a humanist, atheistic, secular culture in the first world, nobody's really aware of what they're doing. Well, all that's going away now. It's going away with podcasts like Sean Atwood interviewing John Wigan, the former head of Metropolitan Vice, the police department in England, had one of his sons murdered for trying to rat out the pedophilia that's going on with the royals and the elites in Britain, and he was the head of the Vice department. It's all coming unstrung now, okay? And amidst all this, we have this powerful transformation in America, which, as it originally began under Trump, was about moving the power base in the world from Washington to Jerusalem. So what they want to do is they want to get rid of the triumvirate. The triumvirate now is Vatican City, London City, and Washington District of Columbia. Okay? And that's all going to go away, and all the power is going to be seated in Jerusalem. That's what I think is going to happen. Over.
Jerusalem also is near the center point of the landmass as well. That's why
it is a nodal point on the earth. If you talk to any Chinese Taoist master, they'll tell you that the earth is the same as a human body. It has meridians, it has energy flows, it has nodal points. You could literally do acupuncture on the earth. Mm-hmm. And Jerusalem absolutely is a very special spot. And so, by the way, so is Riyadh, the city in Saudi Arabia.
I think that's super interesting. How you were saying gematria has a big role in Palamayombe as well. It's really interesting.
Yes, and when you look at the spells in the spell book, they do chalk. Okay, so they have an altar and they have a chalkboard behind it, and they do these complex spells. I swear to God, it looks like calculus minus the numbers. And this is a language, and the entities in the fourth dimension understand this language. And from this language, they know what to do, the spirits know what to do, and by the items on the altar, a little bit of hair from your victim or whatever, they go, and you can kill someone in 24 hours if they're not spiritually protected. This is all real, all real.
Surely there has to be some kind of flow back or protection from stuff that you do and other stuff that you have to do as well.
What kind of a guy does all this? Gets invited to live with Billy.
I remember looking at it, like watching the video, and he would skim across like core ideas like that would just extrapolate to something like a 2-hour conversation. But he would skip across the top of it, and you go, "Oh my God, what about that?" If and he just bang, 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 bang.
Yeah, I've been spending 2 hours a day with this guy for 7 weeks now. Okay. You know, he's one of the most fascinating people I've ever met. If this role I'm on continues, I'm even scared to contemplate what the third book is. I can't imagine what comes after
No,
this.
look,
That's why I sent you Ringing Cedars. Hopefully, it's a bit.
Yeah.
Bit of a...
Now, we have about 3 minutes to go of the show, so I'd like to thank all my guests as well as the listeners. It's been fantastic. It will be put up on YouTube, hopefully in 2 hours, but YouTube sucks, so it could be 5. However, it will go up. That's the main point. If you'd like to share this show with people who have missed it, my channel is called Wafer Thin Entertainment. Wafer is with 1 F. Also, if you enjoyed the last 2 hours, please donate to the station so we can continue on doing this. Now we have final thoughts. John Z, are you on board, or you're folding a nappy? My brain sucks at the moment. John, any final thoughts?
Yeah, he's probably off. He's at work. He's probably off doing something.
Oh, yeah. Well, he's working for the man. And I'll stop singing there. HiJacker, are you still on board? Final thoughts? Well, it is 4 a.m. in the morning, so most people, it's 6 p.m. and it's dark here in Melbourne. So hello from the future. Cortek, final thoughts?
My final thought is I saw today on a live feed from Saudi Arabia someone's video that looked real. They had done blue beam over there, and it wasn't Muhammad or anything like that or UFOs. It was just big low-res planets. So I'm not sure if anyone else caught that, but
I know you sent that to me on Facebook, so I'll check that out.
Last time I checked, it was finished.
Oh, okay. I'll check and
like
then
a live
swear.
stream. It was weird.
Oh,
but
okay.
if they're playing that, they're really scraping the barrel.
Well, yeah, because my mind went to Barney, but that's just me. Bruce, final comments.
Love yourself, love everything, love everyone, even John Podesta and Hillary Clinton. Don't withdraw your love from anybody. It's the only thing that'll keep you sane, balanced, and moving forward spiritually in the times that are coming. Do not stop loving.
Yes, I would say love from afar, especially when Hillary Clinton said we should put a woman on Mars, and my first thought was, well, I choose you. Without a spaceship, and you just get up on that trebuchet and fa-dum, straight up there. There you go. You have been listening to Planet Collingwood Open Round Table. My name is Monty Dean. I was joined by John Z, HiJacker, Bruce MacDonald, and Cortek. You are awesome. You've been awesome, and you will continue being awesome. We will be back in 6 days and 22 hours. See, time's changing. Who knows what? Tomorrow's June? No, wait, Thursday. And coming up in 2 hours, you'll have a moment of Zen, and then Kelsey Sweet with Cultivating Consciousness. So if you want to stick around, I love you all, but not like that. Calm down. I'm going to go watch Lost because I'm near the end of season 2. Every character on Lost is a dick. Anyway, that's a different conversation. Thank you, one. Thank you all.
Cortek, you want to roll for a bit?
Yeah, sure.
All right.
Thanks, Monty. You're the best. Love you from afar.
Yeah, damn straight from afar. I've seen your photos. So stick around for the Planet Collingwood after party with Cortek and Bruce, and whoever else wants to come back, and we will see you again. See you soon. Bye.